MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil and TireRack.com.
From the moment it debuted at the 1975 Paris Auto Show, the Lotus Esprit has been turning heads and making hearts race. The stunning Giugioro-styled body was an instant hit, and for the next 3 decades, the Esprit developed a loyal following. And for good reason. Because despite having less power and fewer cylinders than many of its contemporaries, for as long as the Esprit was in production, it was considered one of the best handling and most exciting supercars ever made.
Just getting into it just puts me in, the best place I could possibly be in. It's every second I'm driving it is pure joy. I never get tired of it. The sort of immediate throttle response, the immediate steering response, the immediate braking response, all of that just makes it just such a pleasure to drive.
For 22 years, Jeff Wong has been the owner of this 1987 Lotus Esprit Turbo HCI. Known as the Series 3 or S3, this iteration was the last to retain the timeless styling by the legendary Italian car designer Giugioro. So while the Esprit was created to go head-to-head with the Italians, it certainly looked like something that had rolled out of the factory in Maranello. But the next year, British designer Peter Stevens, who would later design the legendary McLaren F1, redid the Esprit's exterior, softening the classic wedge styling. So for many Lotus fans, Jeff included, the S3 marks the high point of the Esprit's illustrious life.
To me, especially the Series 3 Esprits, to me are the pinnacle of the design for the sort of pure sports car. There was no power brakes, there was no power steering. I feel totally in touch with the road more than any other car I've ever driven.
Back in the late 80s, Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Porsches were getting all of the attention, but in many ways, the Esprit is actually the better car. It's just as fast as a Ferrari 328, it handles better than a 911, and is way more practical and easier to drive than a Countach. So it was everything you wanted out of a supercar, all in a beautiful package. But by today's standards, the S3 Esprit's numbers don't seem particularly impressive. You'll hit 60 in about 5.5 seconds, it'll take you 14 seconds to hit the quarter mile, and on a long enough road, you could reach 150. But this is a car where the numbers don't tell the whole story. Despite this car only having 215 horsepower from its 2.2-liter engine, it is surprisingly fast. Oof, and the acceleration is just so smooth. I know it's a turbo, but there's almost no lag at all. But the real ace in the hole of the Esprit all comes down to the weight. Lotus engineers had a mantra, performance through lightweight, which is a simple idea. The less a car weighs, the more nimble, responsive, and faster it can be, even without a big 8 or 12-cylinder engine. Combined with a turbo that provides a wonderful flood of torque, a lack of weight is a major reason the S3 Esprit still carries the reputation as being one of the best handling sports cars to ever grace a curvy road. But some of that poise was lost in 1988, when the Peter Stevens design added more than 300 pounds to meet US safety standards. As MotorWeek discovered in a road test of that version, it was still impressive, but many fans say it just wasn't quite the same. But one thing that has always been true of the Esprit is just how civilized and comfortable it is to live with. Unlike many of its rivals, you can cruise in the S3 for hours on end, eating up mile after mile. It's easy to see out of, the leather seats are perfectly supportive, the ride is smooth, and everything is in easy reach. And though it doesn't like to be rushed, the transmission's short throws and slick transitions become second nature. There's no power steering, a feature offered in the subsequent model, but it quickly lightens up once you start driving, and even sitting still, it's far lighter than many of its Italian peers. And while its Italian cousins may have been fighting for the spotlight, the Esprit was happy to be on a quiet stretch of twisty road, putting smiles on the faces of everyone who was lucky enough to get behind the wheel.